we have the story from Fox 5 Atlanta. Marjorie Taylor Greene was victim of swatting at Rome residence. Police confirm. So this is a terrifying story.
It is.
A bunch of outlets have reported this is a prank. A swatting, for those that aren't familiar, I think most of you are, but just in case, is when someone calls the police and says there's a violent crime currently taking place, so that a SWAT team shows up to your house and potentially kills you. People have died from this. And it's horrifying. I can't imagine. There's a story about this guy. Cops surround his house. He has no idea what's going on. He comes out armed. The cops shoot and kill him. Imagine, first of all, that guy being the victim, having no idea why the cops are at your house. Then think about, I'm not saying it's worse, but that cop who was told there's a guy about to murder his wife or something. We need you to save her life. And he shows up and he's like, I got to stop this guy. And then it turns out someone tricked you into killing an innocent man. Talk about the nightmare scenario that swatting is. And they went after Marjorie Taylor Greene's house. This is, it was a trans activist. The reporting was, they told the police that the reason they did it was because they oppose her position on trans kids. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene recently introduced a bill that would make it a felony to give transgender surgery or medication to children. So I'm curious too, James, because you talk about revolution and where we're at. Where does this fit in with, their power grabs, the power structures? Like, what is this?
Okay, so just to mention, by the way, the last time I actually talked to Marjorie like a month ago, and this is exactly the subject, not swatting, but trans activism and the surgeries and everything to the children is exactly what we talked about. So it's kind of funny. I like Marjorie. So what's going on here is kind of an unbridled demonstration of being willing to step outside of the boundaries, the normal boundaries of society, in order to get your way. So Marjorie Taylor Greene proposes a bill. This is the way that we do things. If the bill passes, the bill passes. There are lots of bills that pass that people like or don't like on either side, and that's just the name of the game. Maybe it doesn't pass, maybe whatever. But the idea that you're now going in to do this act of intimidation that basically sends this huge signal.
Outright terror.
Outright terror.
Literal definition of it.
There's few things. There are some things, but there are a few things scarier than the idea, like you said, of armed, angry police officers thinking something is going on that requires desperate measures surrounding your house or whatever at 1 a.m. right in the middle of the night. You're asleep. You don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden this is happening. And so what this is it's just another escalation in the kind of pattern of intimidation that we're seeing. So what were they doing outside the Supreme Court justices' houses? They were protesting, but then Judge Kavanaugh has a credible threat to his life involved with this. And what do you have? Well, it turns out, funny enough, you mentioned trans activists. The exact same trans activist who got me kicked off of Twitter, the exact same one, Alejandra Carabello, advocated for more of this, the intimidation tactics, intimidating of the Supreme Court justices, even in this environment. The exact same one. So what you have is people who are stepping outside of the frame of society. They're breaking the detente of society to get their way, and they feel perfectly entitled to be able to do it because they've got some trumped up idea about, what do you call it, systemic or structural
while
power.
Demanding that you stay within the lines.
Oh, yeah,
and so
absolutely. That's a repressive tolerance again, or liberating tolerance, actually.
We saw this with the Gravel Institute.
Mm-hmm.
After January 6th, the Gravel Institute tweeted that they supported the action, but not the people. The people were the wrong ones to do it, and they deleted the tweet. People were like, you're saying that you thought that was good? And they were like, yup. And then they were like, y'all are crazy. And then they deleted it like, okay, maybe we shouldn't admit that. That's the crazy thing. You have people who are lucid. They understand what they're doing. They know how the machine works. They know why they're claiming you can't do it and while they do it. But then you have the dumb people who mindlessly march along completely clueless and don't care. Sam Harris comes off to me like he is, what's the opposite of sentient?
Sam Harris comes off to me as the fulfillment of the critical theory magnum opus called Dialectic of Enlightenment, to be honest with you.
Explain.
So Dialectic of Enlightenment was this book written in 1944 and rewritten and published again in 1947 by Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno, the two kind of principal critical theorists of the era. And what they said is that, you start off with the Enlightenment, you enter into this phase denouncing myth and entering into rationality. But what happens is that through the dialectical process of transformation of Enlightenment, rationality itself becomes its own mythology, and you literally enter into this new kind of religious order of rationality that completely divorces you from being genuinely rational. You're now operating within this myth. And I read this book and I was like, this is insane. This is just crazy. And then I looked at Sam Harris and I was like, oh, okay.
So maybe what's the opposite of lucid?
Murky?
Yeah,
Murky?
clouded.
Clouded?
Yeah.
Well, so the way I see it is Sam Harris is...
Dude, it's almost like looking through cataracts instead of
Right.
lucid vision. It's like he's got this fog in front of his eyes.
But I don't think that's the right way to describe it, because hypnosis is a better way to describe
Yeah,
it.
that's a good way to put it. It is a
Because
good way to put
even
it.
if your eyes are cloudy, you can be thinking clearly.
Yeah.
Even if your information is bad, you wouldn't say something as insane about dead kids. He's in a state of like cult hypnosis.
Yeah.
That has stripped away his individuality, his agency. And
Yeah.
now he's just mindlessly droning along. There are people like that, but then there are people who are fully aware they're breaking the rules and they know it and they don't care. Like I mentioned, the Gravel Institute.
Oh yeah, totally. So this is something a lot of people don't really fully appreciate about our current moment, is that we're actually not dealing with just politics at all. We're dealing with, it's not even like the soul or the future of America. We're dealing with two fundamentally different conceptions of what it means to be a human being, or literally, I mean, down to religious roots of what it means to be a person. And kind of the American answer kind of comes from John Locke, who in essence is like, well, none of us are God, so none of us deserve political authority. So we're going to secure life, liberty, and property so people can think for themselves and disagree amongst one another, because we don't have all the answers. And so the American system, really, the question is who deserves political authority? And Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, these guys meet together, and their answer, James Madison, were like, nobody deserves it, but we'll lend it to you under these conditions. And that's called a republic.
Yeah.
But the answer, these leftists fundamentally believe, Marxist-style leftists fundamentally believe that they're the only enlightened, conscious people on the planet that understand how stuff's supposed to work. So they not only should have political authority, they're entitled to political authority. So they get to step outside of the rules because they're fully entitled to have political authority over everything.
You want to read that one?
Yeah, okay, so it's pronounced Gravel.
Gravel.
Okay, the Gravel Institute. When was that? 1/8/21. So
Yep.
January 8th.
2 days after January 6th.
Okay, got you. But if leftists had stormed the Capitol, you'd support it, in scare quotes. Yes, they are fighting for a good cause. Fascists are fighting for a very bad cause. This should not be difficult. This is the thesis statement of repressive tolerance, written right again. That's exactly the thesis statement. If we went down to the thesis statement of repressive tolerance in the essay, he says that liberating tolerance can be summarized in basically a single sentence. And he says that tolerance must be extended to movements from the left and must be withdrawn from movements from the right.
Which is exactly why they never seem to complain about the Soviet Union or the Cultural Revolution and these other countries that currently exist that are still communist, but they're always screaming Nazi Germany.
That's right. That's exactly
fascists.
right. The fascists. That's right. They never recognize that if you actually read Marx's different stages of history, where you bail out of capitalism, you have your revolution, and you have a dictatorship of the proletariat. That's the next stage. That's called socialism. That socialism is actually a fascist state that is supposed to dialectically unwind to a utopia, which it's not going to do.
There's a meme, and this female journalist, personality leftist, tweeted, people often point out how socialism has failed in so many countries. But if it doesn't work, you don't just give up. You keep trying. And then someone responded, they said, like cooking, if you make a mistake, you just start, try again. And someone responded with oops, burn the souffle. And it's a picture of
Pile of skulls.
Yeah, brutal murder.
Well, I mean, that is actually their idea. So the idea is, I mean, to get deeper into the philosophy behind it, that you have this thing out floating in the world. This is Hegel. Okay, so Hegel precedes Marx. Marx retools Hegel and makes it material. Hegel's idea is that there's this literal concept of God called the absolute idea. So it's the perfected idea, the absolute, Platonic form of how everything in the universe should operate. It's the deity. But we don't have access to that. So it splits into two sides, the theoretical idea and the practical idea. The theoretical idea is our idea about it, our guess about it, our theory, or how we think the world's supposed to work. The practical idea is how it actually gets implemented, usually through the state. By the way, he said that the state is the divine idea as it exists on earth.
And this is just to help you understand if you ever see the left start gloating about praxis.
Yes, that's right. And so what the idea of praxis is supposed to bring theory and practice together again. So the theoretical idea and practical idea are supposed to come together, which reinstitutes the absolute. So the idea is that when you put the Soviet Union into practice and 30-something, 40-something million people die, what you were doing is you're exposing the contradiction between the theoretical and the practical. So what you're actually doing is learning more about why it didn't work this time And so you thank those people, or in Hegel's words, I mean, literally, this is a quote from Hegel, history uses people and then discards them. So they were discarded on the altar of the god of history, sacrificed to the god of history so that history could move to its perfected endpoint.
You should watch Full Metal Alchemist. Have you ever watched it?
I know what it is. I've seen like some parts of it, but I haven't actually watched it all the way through. But I'm sure that this is going to relate because what Hegel was a hermeticist, which is an alchemist.
There's two animes that I recommend, or manga, Attack on Titan and Full Metal Alchemist, because they directly deal. So Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is it follows the manga. And I know a lot of people out there, they might not be fans of any of this stuff, graphic novels or whatever, but seriously consider this, because what it deals with is powerful elites who want to sacrifice the people for more power. That's Full Metal Alchemist. I don't want to spoil it if you're going to check it out, but it very much deals with this, how the population throughout history are sacrificed for more and more power. And then Attack on Titan, it's funny, someone posted a meme of Jordan Peterson saying you should watch Attack on Titan, and it's not real, but if you're a fan of Jordan Peterson and you watch that show, you're going to be like, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually did say it, because it deals with privilege and historical racism and all of that stuff in those shows. So they're very, very interesting. But anyway, I digress.
Believe it or not, I actually know a manga, and that's Death Note. I actually know
Oh,
one.
amazing.
Yeah, that one's
Death
cool.
Note's so good.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I got questions about this. Marcuse is the guy who wrote
Marcuse, yeah.
Marcuse, and this is the 60s. What was the name of the paper again?
Repressive tolerance.
So they're saying that leftists should be tolerated. Violence from leftists should be tolerated, but from the right, not even the thought should enter their mind. Why?
Correct.
That sounds out of balance. Without a balanced right and left to function together, I would think that the system would fail. Why?
Okay, yeah, because they believe that what happens is that the system is inherently corrupt, and the system is inherently designed to reproduce itself. And only the true leftist understands how to break free of what they called this the problem of reproduction. So that society reproduces itself by all of its means and mechanisms. So only that which steps out of the mechanisms of reproduction is to be condoned. So anything else on the right, what you're doing is you have a oppressive society, a repressive society, a harmful society, a racist society, a sexist society, a classist society. And if you don't reject that utterly, in fact, he called it the great refusal, Marcuse did. If you don't reject that utterly and step completely outside of it, all you're doing is becoming complicit. Doesn't this sound familiar to the world we live in today? You're becoming complicit in those harms and keeping those harms going. So in some sense, you bear moral responsibility for every act of racism that comes up later in life, in the world, for every act of, capitalist exploitation or whatever that happens later in the world. If you don't completely refuse the system, then you're complicit in that. So they don't want balance. They think that balance is a form of compromise that keeps oppression alive. So you have to have a complete, he calls it again, the great refusal of the entire terms of the existing society. And the question is, how do you solve the problem of reproduction? And the answer that they gave was relentless criticism, problematization of everything. Quite literally, Marcuse says that it must be relentless negative thinking, and that negative thinking will become positive by actually freeing up the ideal society that is contained within the existing corrupt form. And we go back to the alchemy. This is alchemy. A lot of people don't know what the religion of alchemy is about, but it is a religion, by the way. It's a very old, many thousands of years old religious view, and it's that when in the act of creation, God co-creates himself and the universe, okay? The exact same instant of creation. But he makes himself in the universe. So every single thing, whether it's this pen or whatever, me, you, the crystal balls, whatever it is on the table, there's some aspect of the divine contained within that, but it's in its mundane form. And so what you have to do is use the magical spells of alchemy to break open the mundane form of the thing so that the divine form can come out. Lead is a mundane metal, so you have to do the magic spells, break open the nature of lead at a metaphysical level, and then the seed of gold inside will transform the entire lump of metal into gold, which is the divine metal. Death is the mundane form of existence, so you have to break open and make the elixir of life that will break open the death and turn it into life, which is divine. And the same thing is being expressed by Marcuse in these essays that he's writing, especially Repressive Tolerance here, is that if you break open the form of society, then what can happen is that the ideal divine version of it, heaven, or as Henry Giroux, I mentioned earlier, put it, the kingdom of God as it exists on earth, can emerge from the oppressive forms that are trapping it and holding it back.
Do they acknowledge that when you break open a society, it can also, immolate or
they should listen to Gandalf talking to Saruman, because he's like, whoever breaks a thing to see how it works has left the path of wisdom. That's no. That's the problem is they think that the world is intrinsically bad, right? So this turns out not to necessarily be the Hermetic side. If we go back to Hegel, what did he do? He combined Hermeticism with another old religion called Gnosticism, an old mystery religion. The Gnostics believe that being itself, we've been cast into a prison by the character in Genesis that gets called God, but he's actually the demiurge. He's actually a demon. And so he's not the real supreme being behind the scenes. And so the whole of being is a prison where you don't get to be who you want. You have to grow up. You have a body you didn't ask for. So maybe you have to transition. Maybe it shackles you to having babies. And so, you have to be able to have infinite abortion. You have to be able to transform your body. This view that your very existence and existence itself is a prison and the form of society is a prison is the mindset that they're in. So there's no balance. And if all you do is burn down the prison, that's still better than leaving people in it.
This is fascinating. I want to say, though, they're wrong.
No, of course they're wrong.
Life is a gift.
Yeah.
The body is we've been, I look at it this way. I saw a meme earlier, and it was God and the devil, and they were arm wrestling. And it was some political cartoon. It said, only a fool would create his own enemy. And then I responded with, when we program video games, we make the villains on purpose. Your argument is childish. But this idea of, your body being a prison or whatever, when we play video games, you play a character which has limits. It's enjoyable. It is done on purpose for something we want to do. You get a character, the character's weak, you make it strong, or you start, how many women played Mario? It's oh, now you're a guy. It's they don't complain that Mario can't turn into a woman or be a different character. It's you play the game, you enjoy it. Life is a gift. You got, it's not particularly long, but it's long enough in a lot of ways, and you get to experience this slice of existence, and that's unique and that's magical.
Well, so speaking of video games, sorry, I'll give you a second, but you ever play, so believe it or not, I know last time I was here I was don't play video games, but believe it or not, I used to play video games, and I got really into at one point this Final Fantasy series, and I was playing Final Fantasy X, which is that legendary kind of epic story. Everybody gets all excited about it, and it turns out that the game is set up so that you can actually get these crystals or whatever they are and just keep making your character stronger and stronger and stronger. And it turns out I was playing on my brother's account or whatever, and he left. He went out to San Diego for 3 weeks, and I'm just playing, and I'm bored, just chilling every night playing the game. And I made these characters super strong. So even the little sissy, weak magic users or whatever, they aren't supposed to be able to hit with their stick very hard. It would hit, and it'd be all nines and kill everything in one hit. And it's he came back, and he was what the heck? The game's not even fun.
Yep.
So when you go God mode in a game, it's not even fun anymore.
Exactly.
It takes everything away from it. And so, this idea that the body is a prison completely misses the give and take of reality and of life that makes life interesting and worth living. It's really a sad and miserable existence. And I do have tremendous pity for people that are sucked into this kind of way of thinking. But ultimately, I think this is where the drive comes from.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.